Award-winning yet mediocre and controversial ag teachers Lyle and Marshall Swafford are doing the ultimate ag education podcast for you. That's right, you. Each week, Lyle and Swaff will discuss topics that are important to the profession in this practical but unvarnished podcast in the hopes that you and your students will benefit. Disclaimer, the information provided in this podcast will be accurate and professionally beneficial, but we are not too worried about saying it nicely.
Hello, and welcome to the Ag Shop. This is the Ministry of Gentlemanly Ag Teachers, where we share with you the tips and tricks that have made us the highly mediocre, yet controversial ag teachers we are today. I'm Swaff, and as always, I am joined by my esteemed co-host, the man with the face for radio and the voice for silent movies, our friend and your favorite, Lyle Logeman. So, Lyle, made it through our first episode. Thank you for all the listeners. It's kind of cool to see those numbers begin to build up on who's been listening on YouTube and Spotify. I've got a bunch of students that I've apparently hacked into our Spotify account because I had one student tell me after listening to the podcast that they loved me. So apparently I have those children fooled, or they're just really good kids up here. And before I turn this over to Lyle today to kind of run the show, and I'm going to sit here and try to listen and learn, would like to give a shout out to the Vice President of the Kingfisher, Oklahoma FFA chapter, my daughter, Caroline Swafford, for being selected to sing in the National FFA Chorus at the National Convention here later this fall. And after looking at the price of hotel rooms in Indianapolis for that week, I think I'm just going to commute back and forth from Texas because it's just a whole lot cheaper. And so with that, Lyle has a great episode planned for us. And Lyle, take it away, dude.
Dr. Swafford, I have a couple things I want to talk about first. How does it feel to have a daughter that can sing and you can't at all?
Well, so she actually gets that from me. Her mother is not the musical talented slant, a great high school swimmer, but I am the third coming of Willie Nelson in Hemphill County, Texas. No, I can't sing. I can't carry a tune in a bucket if somebody did it for me. So it's actually really pretty cool. We got to go see her sing at Carnegie Hall a couple of years ago in New York City, and that is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm going to join me a men's chorus. I think it's time. I think I have finally found my calling. There's a men's chorus in Dallas. I'm going to go join it.
Hey, that would be, that'd be a good way to meet people.
There you go. I'm thinking about it. And Swaff, you always know exactly where to plunge the dagger. What's this thing about I got a face for radio and a voice for whatever? I thought we were a team on
silent movie.
Silent movie.
If you can't make fun of your friends, who can you make fun of? Because, we're not here to alienate anybody. We're all inclusive here.
Right. Yeah. We are the Ministry of Gentlemanly Ag Teachers and Gentlewomanly Ag Teachers. We are. Yes. We are everybody that's an ag teacher or interested in ag teaching at all. That's what we're here for. Okay.
Gentle peoplely.
We're for the gentle people. Okay. All right. Well, Swaff, I've been thinking all week about this, and it's something that's really been on my mind, especially. We've come to the first 2 weeks of school. That's about where we're at. And you got into your first week of school, correct? Okay. All right. Them first 2 weeks of school are very, very telling. It gives you an opportunity to get to know your students, especially in a new place where I am. I've got to know a lot of my students, see a lot of different kids, a lot of kids a day. And it's really been fantastic. The amount of students that been able to come in contact with and being able to start some things in ag mechanics and things like that. So, with that being the case, I ask myself daily, why am I here? Why are we here as ag teachers, as educators? Why is it important that we are here? And fundamentally, why is it important that we have been here continuously for the last 100 years or since the establishment of the Future Farmers of America in 1928, Smith-Hughes Act passing in 1917, correct? 1917, right, Swaff?
Yes, and don't forget about the FFE in 1925.
Exactly, okay. New Farmers of America, 4-H, all these other organizations that have endeavored throughout the years or throughout our history in agriculture education to bring it to the pinnacle or the summit of what it is. And it's because of ag educators. It's because of administration, parents, and of course it's because of students, because they have carried the torch throughout the years to make those things happen, and the great milestones that we have reached in our profession. So why are we here? It's in our FFA opening ceremonies. We know it well. Practice brotherhood, honor agricultural opportunities and responsibilities, and develop those qualities of leadership, which an FFA member should possess. Now, by that same token, what types of leadership should we possess as ag teachers? What is the levels of leadership that we should possess, and where does that come from? And I like to reflect on our history. I'm a big historian, and I collect a lot of FFA memorabilia. I'll show her. I got it hanging above me. I got it covering both walls of my office, and I just love FFA history. And I know you do too. And so I was reflecting on this idea that who we are is what we have always been. And so I was reading the other day, and I want you to guess when I read this first paragraph of a bit of prose I found in an old FFA manual. I want you to guess what year it's from. I want you to guess the year when it's written after I get done reading the first little bit here. Okay. In these days, dangerous in their clamors for bigness, speed, and luxury, one needs to remind himself that increase of possessions, whether of property or power, does not ensure progress in satisfaction. This comes from the unfaltering pursuit and service of truth, beauty, and goodness in everyday life, and from helping on the happiness and prosperity of our fellows. To work in that way for the advancement of the community, state, and nation, I take it, is the large, inclusive aim which animates the future farmers of America. What year do you think that was written, Swaff?
So you sent this to me earlier this weekend, and I've read through what you read from, followed along, but I do not know which manual this came from. So I'm going to guess somewhere the 60s.
Okay, all right. It is even before that. It is actually after the birth or inception of the Future Farmers of America when they were created. It's about 4 or 5 years after that. Probably about 4 years.
So we're talking early 30s.
Early 30s, very early 30s, 1931.
Oh,
and I happen to have the very manual that came from. This manual's from 1931. This is the second edition of the official manual that we had for FFA. And so that was written by a man named Charles Homer Lane. But Charles Homer Lane is known as, I don't know exactly one of the 4 founders of FFA, but he's high up there. He worked in the United States in the United States Office of Education in Washington, D.C. in the 20s and 30s. He was a Massachusetts man, came from Massachusetts. He was the father of the poultry contest that we have today. He helped design early on that early career development event. Okay. Some other things, where it's not as much known about Charles Homer Lane, but we know right now, from what I can see, he was a prolific writer. So in the 20s and 30s, America at that time, we're in a Great Depression, a great economic conflict, stock market has crashed, and here we are with Charles Homer Lane, who also is credited as being the author of the FFA Motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. And so some other things, he was responsible for one other thing. He was the first national FFA advisor we ever had. He served as national FFA advisor for about 5 years. And so I was thinking about these things. Why are we here? And I think as an educator, we reflect a lot about things, we hear a lot about, it's not about the income, it's about the outcome. Okay. And I think that what really got me to thinking about this is an ag teacher who I first knew when I started teaching over in Whiteface, Texas, named Jim Daniel. He was the part-time teaching partner to my teaching partner. So when I came in, Jim officially retired at that point. He was only there part-time, and he passed away about 2 weeks ago. He was a really good man, really good ag teacher. Came from that old school swagger, just very, very, very great at what he did in his day. And so I thought about that, about time, about what time we have as educators and the time that we have with students to help create what their priorities are. What do we need to value? And I want to hear your response on this. What do you think Charles Homer Lane was talking about when he said, in these days dangerous in their clamors for bigness, speed, and luxury, one needs to remind himself an increase of possessions, whether of property or power, does not ensure progress and satisfaction. What does that mean to you?
I think it's actually pretty timely right now, especially with, the rage with artificial intelligence and where that fits in education and relying more on artificial means of production and just in production agriculture relative to what it was for, my dad's generation that were the guys that were those baby boomers. Speed, bigness and speed are wrong. We live in an agricultural world today where we have to deal with that economy of scale. And it's hard to make it go with, 15 Holstein cows out back to make a living. You need to add a couple of zeros to that, and you might get lucky and make a profit with that. And so, as we clamor for larger farms, as we continue to gobble up the small guys and women and family operations to turn into to generate these corporate operations. There's going to come a time when we get so big that we don't know what to do with it. And then the whole speed concept, speed kills. We talk about on the football field with coaches talking about playing fast. Sometimes as an ag teacher that's been doing this for a while, I catch myself, especially as late February, 1st of March rolls around, that train starts rolling a lot faster, and you feel like you're catching yourself coming and going to school. Those nights where, and everybody's done one of those where you left super late and you got there super early because you got another group of kids coming in, if that's how you do things. And, you get into that, and we end up becoming victims of our own desires and what those desires are, whether it's hanging plaques for kids or hanging plaques for yourself, and you're going and going and going. And when it's all said and done, that speed is what burns people out.
Right. But is it the saying goes, is that dissatisfaction is what makes the world go round?
I thought it was gravity and the rotation of the sun around the earth, or whatever the Pope said in 7 AD. I can't remember. But, I guess I try to live in that moderation zone. I've been accused of being too intense. Okay. Came by that pretty naturally. But as I have gotten older, I know how to set the cruise control a little bit slower, and it doesn't wear me out as much, although it seemed like I was going to bed a little earlier this last week because after not having students for 3 months, I was worn out at the end of the day. I'm getting older. But, if we find that location on the cruise control where we're going to be able to get to where we need to get to with the amount of time that is necessary without beating ourselves into the dirt, I think everybody would be a lot happier. But there's a lot of us, especially as you're young and you're still learning how to do this, you catch yourself. It's like driving through town, and you get lucky and you hit every green light. I was driving through Amarillo a couple of weeks ago. Man, I hit every green light. It was great. And then sometimes it seems like you hit every red light, and you speed up and then you have to slow down again. You speed up, you have to slow down. You just can't quite get over that hump to where you catch that green light so it can kind of cruise it out. And a lot of it has to do with we're trying to go, 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 go. We put it upon ourselves that we have to do everything because we don't know any better when we're younger or at a school fairly early in that stage. And we get to Christmas like, man, dude, I'm not sure I'm going to come back till after Christmas. And so, as we get bigger, because undoubtedly the population's growing, although it has slowed down quite a bit, but the size of farms are increasing, and the speed at which it seems like we have to get started with responsibilities and expectations at school has changed to where now, where you used to be able to do your FFA roster type things, in a few weeks. You've already been getting emails. I've been getting emails before school even started for us about getting those rosters done. And now with some of those different changes that are going on in Texas now, with having to have permission forms from every parent for every student who wants to participate in activities, those are adding to, it seems like, that buildup that always seemed like it took until, the middle of September for me before things began to roll a little bit quicker. And now it seems like the school year is rolling a little bit faster earlier. And that is a concern to me. Because we've got some teachers, young ones and those that are new to the profession that are still maybe trying to find their sea legs a little bit and still trying to figure out who students are and how class schedules work and school expectations and who's got lunch duty this week and who's watching the hallways. And then on top of it, in the backside that the students don't see a lot of times are these responsibilities that come down from outside of the school district that yet are still responsibilities of ours. And so, the size and the speed are concerning to me. And I think that contributes to a lot of the reasons why we've got revolving doors at some of these schools.
All right. We got societal changes. Could you say that's the truth, Swaff?
Absolutely. Society is driving expectations, with the advent of the way that we're even able to film this podcast. I can hop on right now and I can buy every show animal for a student without ever stepping out of the school if I don't want to. I can get all the plans to build projects without ever stepping outside of school if I want to. We could get all of our curriculum if you want to without, even cracking a book anymore. And so, with the expectations to incorporate technology in your classes and the expectations to utilize the technologies that exist to enhance your teaching or And unfortunately for some teachers, it has become their teaching, which is a whole other episode. But as society changes and becomes more reliant upon this medium that you and I are using today, we need to maybe go back to the way things were in some places and still engage with our students. And, one of the things, and I know that my kids in Oklahoma and those of us in Texas, that we had that state law come through where no cell phones at school. And you know what? It has been
Great.
one of the best 3 days of our first week of school I've ever had. Back in the summertime, my oldest boy Carson was talking. He's like, Dad, this no cell phone thing at school is terrible. We're going to have teachers at school that are going to still be on their phone and kind of brag that they get to use theirs and we can't. And I'm like, well, Carson, they're adults and you're not. And then I got to thinking about it. And, Carson had a little bit of a point. And so what I did this year is, I kind of laid out what our expectations were, just like all of the other teachers did in the school. And I've got a class that's a pretty good size for my little classroom. So they put all their backpacks in one spot and get their iPads out and leave their phones up. And different than what I've been doing in the past, I left my phone in my office, sat it on my desk. And the first day of school was the day that we set our first video out. And so my flip phone was blowing up pretty well all day. And I didn't know it until in between classes because I shut the notifications off on my watch. And you know what? It was actually kind of a peaceful school day. And the kids and I have been talking about it every day. Guys, what's it like to not have your phone every day? And they're like, Swaff, I think Mom and Dad are more upset about it than I am. And it has really been good. Kids have been talking again, and kids are like engaged again. Now I got to figure out how to keep them off them flipping video games on their iPad.
I know.
But the phone deal, and it's just been, we had some welding tables that we kind of need to do a little bit of repair work on. I got a couple older classes where I can trust them. We can go out there and kind of get that done. I mean, it was great. Work got done faster than I was expecting, but I didn't account for the 15 minutes of non-lost time that normally would have happened with a cell phone. And so it has actually it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, life's cool being out of the loop. I don't got to be on Facebook all the time to enjoy
That's
life.
right.
Yeah, and I've learned that. I said I'll say it. All right, I don't want to sound like, oh, he's living in a lot 1950s, but America was a better place when we got up in the morning and read the newspaper, right? Because that's as much news as you got all day long until you listened to the evening news on the radio, or maybe if you had a TV, right? So that's as mad as you could be. That's as mad as you had a right to be in the morning towards the news, and then you went on about your day.
I can't hardly stand to read the news anymore. It's depressing.
Yeah.
I looked at it Monday, and then I didn't look at it again all week because we were starting school and doing some things. And I looked at the news yesterday morning on Saturday, and I'm like, God, I'm going to start living in my own little fantasy land because it's a hell of a lot funner.
You don't walk away feeling better ever. You're like, oh,
No.
that's another catastrophe. Anyway, well, okay, so that leads me into part two of what we're talking about in 1931, okay, about some of these things that are timeless as ag educators. So if we look at number one in 1931, I wrote some of these things down. Wheat sold for a bushel, 38 cents a bushel for wheat, 6 cents a pound for cotton.
Hey.
25% of our nation, 25% of the population of our nation was directly involved in farming, production agriculture. It's about 30 million people, 25% of our nation directly involved in farming. We were still an agrarian society, okay? And so we have not only what we're dealing with, bread lines, soup kitchens because of the Great Depression, things like that, okay? And then we have these people who come along where agriculture education, FFA is trying to take off. We're in year 4, right? Charles Homer Lane continues to write this next part. The social unrest, the agricultural discontent in some parts, and the disappearance of the love of labor as the source of joy in life all raise the inquiry, are we on the right lines in education for safety, prosperity, and happiness? Without doubt, there is urgent need to transfuse the spirit of the daily task on the farm, in this case, we could say the classroom, by high ideals and standards. These are developed by the kind of vocational education which is becoming an integral part of the rural high schools of several states. They belong and grow out of the mood of the mind and manner in which work is done. Now, only somebody educated in the classics could write something like that. Right. And now we look at these men who went to college back then. They went to college to study the classics, Latin, Greek, English literature. And they're writing this bit of prose to rally the troops that what we're doing is important, that better days through better ways will only be achieved if we understand that this is America And America has seen some hard times, but we're going to
Sure.
fight this through. And I
Sure.
think that's a daily occurrence in agriculture education. It is what we are is what we've always been. And these people of this era encountered some of the harshest living environments.
Oh,
And my
sure.
great grandparents were there, your great grandparents were there. They knew what the economy was. And we even look now, we have a screwworm issue, and we have the issue with really low numbers of our cattle herd since 1951. Okay. It's caused the
Sure.
price of beef to go way up.
Right.
We're having a record year for corn production. And 1975, we were hit $4 a bushel. It was great for everybody back then. Well, right now we're like $3.78 a bushel, and the price of everything has went up. Fertilizer, equipment prices, everything. The price of everything has went up, while at the same time we're still making the same amount of money, which means we have to produce all the more in order for producers to make a profit. And so we what affects production agriculture, what affects the industry, affects us as educators. And it makes
Sure.
it difficult sometimes to how do we motivate a student to continue to pursue a career in agriculture? Or at the same time, are they going to peek outside the door and go look for another opportunity? And it's a wide enough world now that happens anyway. But we look at a number of those things as to what is our continued purpose daily as educators in this in what we do. So what are your thoughts on that bit that Charles Homer Lane wrote in that second paragraph?
I think, you begin, and I'm cheating here because I'm actually looking at the page relative to our listeners, but it completely plays into the motto eventually 2 or 3 paragraphs down. The social unrest, we've got more social unrest now than we've had in a long time. It's easy to hop on just about any type of media where we can see some of our citizens that are pretty fired up about things, and that's their right. And I don't have a problem with people. I really honestly don't have a problem with people complaining and making their point, as long as we're following the rules and the law that allows us to do those things. Disappearance of the love of labor as a source of joy in life. So, that's one of those where we've gone from 25% of our population and 30 million people directly involved in farming to now it's a couple of million, and we're down on the single digits percentage wise. And, we look at that as, could that be a sign of that lack of love of labor? And I guess I look at it, ag teachers, we're a little bit different. There are days when I am more effective, and then there are days where it's like, I've got to get out and I've got to go do something. And there's a lot of us out there that have side hustles or side hobbies where, I enjoy working with my students, but there's times when I need to get out and go do something a little bit different. And we've got a handful of us ag teachers that go off and go do a lot of running and some Ironmans out there. There's a lot of ag teachers out there that also have raised livestock on the side, raise crops on the side. I don't do that much anymore, but I like to do woodworking on the and build things because I've got to be doing something. And it seems like there's that, I guess the group of those of us that like to do something all the time may be changing. We are maybe not as involved in agriculture as we once were. I know my dad's ag teacher, Mr. Rhodes at Polo High School in Polo, Missouri. He worked outside of school. Dad always did some things on the side, judged a lot of livestock shows in the summertime, and I learned woodworking from him. But it seems like there's more of us now that come to school, teach class, go home. And, if we are attempting to persuade and motivate our students into becoming valuable members of the agricultural society, I guess I don't want to say industry because I think we're a part of the industry, just agricultural society. We need to be demonstrating some of these values again that, hey, you know what? It's a good thing to get out and work. It's rewarding. It's beneficial. I got some great news this week from secondhand from a teacher at school who teaches some of our dual credit courses in English through I think it's through UT, University of Texas, and was talking to one of our senior boys, and he popped off and said that maybe this ag teaching thing is the route that he wants to take. And, he plays football. He works with the show pig guy in the county and moves a lot of hogs out west. And he wants to do this. And he's the type of kid that looks like those of us that, we're going to go to school, but then we do other things to stay actively engaged in our world so that we can do a better job for our students. And that's what would make me prouder if this student decided that this is what he wanted to do with his life. And so I think there are those students still out there, but who are they looking to get this? And, we need to take those reins up again and continue to motivate our students that, hey, hard work is a good thing. It's moral, it's socially acceptable, it's good for your body, it's good for your mind, it's good for your soul, and not be afraid to tell that to students and then demonstrate that for them. But at least that's kind of how I see that paragraph.
And with that, let's go down to the third paragraph that Charles Homer Lane writes in 1931 America, at which point my great grandfather was only 24 years old. So I can only imagine if he's past his time to kind of be an FFA, but I think if he was a well-read person, so I think he would have appreciated what Lane wrote. All right. Achievement of the individual is made the basis for advancement from rank to rank in the future farmers of America. Past work is of a high order, a successful handling of project work, evidence of thrift, and a practical demonstration of leadership. Let me go back up top. Are the passports to higher degrees of the organization. So what do we think Lane's talking about there?
Well, it sounds like he's talking about the things that we do today. Achievement of the individual is the basis for advancement from rank to rank. Okay, so we go from green hand to chapter to state to American degree, and every one of those degrees has their requirements. So nothing is different now than it was nearly 100 years ago. Classwork of a high order, you still have to have an acceptable academic record to earn these degrees, which you should. You should. And what irritates me is when kids or teachers or parents say it's just to act. That drives me bonkers. What does that mean? Okay. The hardest classes I ever took in college were ag classes. I mean, I was happy to get a B in George Gilly's soils class at Northwest Missouri State University. I was proud of having that B. I worked hard for that.
I was happy to get a B in your soils class in college.
I can't, I worked at it, and so, that is important. And then the successful handling of project work. Have one of the foundational tenets of ag education is the project method. And I mean, and it's just like I was talking to one of my freshman classes on Friday. Guys, ladies, I can teach you everything you need to know about how to work in the shop, but it's not going to do you a lick of good to sit and listen to me without going out there and actually doing it. And we have thrived for the last 100 years with this method, and we'll thrive for another 100 years using this method, but we can't forget to use this method. Evidence of thrift, managing our money. Farmers are they are subjects to the weather. They're subjects to factors that are completely out of their control, and managing themselves and their operations is paramount to their success. And managing what we do at school is paramount to our success, not getting big, not depleting our resources to the point where we can't do anything. And then a practical demonstration of leadership are the passports to higher degrees in the organization. I was talking to my freshman the other day about, what is leadership? How do we teach students leadership? And that is one of those areas where the project method is vital. Putting students in situations where they have to make decisions for themselves for what's going on currently and how to prepare themselves for the future is vital. And I can stand up and talk about every leadership theory known to man, but until you're out there and doing something, and school, we try to manage what those situations look like so that we can protect our students. But it's kind of like that football coach. You can have best damn game plan ever, and it's going to work until somebody goes up and smacks you in the mouth. And then we're going to always kind of need to readjust. And, life's pretty easy until you get out there and you're doing it on your own. And so, being able to demonstrate the ability to make sound quality decisions to move your project or your program forward are the things that we do every single day, or at least we should.
Passports to higher degrees of the organization, or passports to the higher degrees of living life.
Life.
Okay. All right, let's go down to the fourth paragraph. The possibilities of the future farmers of America are immeasurable, according to the Secretary of Agriculture in 1931. Through their leadership, we may expect a new agriculture, an agriculture lighted by science and organized to demand an equal share with industry in the country's general prosperity. There is no more hopeful sign of progress among our farm population. Isn't that incredible?
That is just as true now as it was then. I mean, how do you even build on that?
I don't. It's timeless.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not smart enough to explain it. We're talking new agriculture, led by science. And what's crazy is prior to 1917 and with the with the Smith Hughes Act, education was more scientifically based, and students lose sight of that. Teachers have lost sight of that, and that's unfortunate because agricultural science is as important as chemistry and physics and biology, because when you look at it, it's all of those wrapped up into one. And we are a scientifically based academic program, and I don't want to discount the value of career preparation and career awareness, but at the same time, not incorporating scientific study into what we're doing, I have always thought diminishes what we're doing.
Okay. All right. So we have some great insight from the Secretary of Agriculture at that time. Let's go to the next paragraph. Rural leadership is the outstanding need of the hour. It will continue to be the greatest need in the future. Much of the hope for improved farming conditions lies in cooperative enterprise, and successful cooperation depends on leadership. This needs to be taught every day. I mean, this right here,
Every day.
this page ought to be hanging in every high school ag classroom in America. That is my opinion. It ought to, because even though it's written close to 100 years ago, it is still, these people had the sensitivity and the intellect to understand what was going on. And so it takes our cooperation every day. And so that's the thing too. Why are we here? We're
Why
here
are
for
we
each
here?
other. We're here for each other. If we're agriculture educators, we have to be there. We have to have colleagues. We have to have a cohort of people in what we do. That is our defense. That's our offense too. It helps us maintain it helps us justify what we do every day. It's because we have individuals who are dedicating day in and day out to ensure that cooperation occurs. None of our contests occur without cooperation. None of our conventions occur without cooperation. None of our livestock shows, none of our ag meg shows, none of that occurs without that cooperation, and teaching students to follow suit as well in the future.
That's and the way that we provide that leadership for our students to model what we're doing is to actually demonstrate that and mean it. Everybody has their specialty, everybody has their expertise. And it's like, it seems as though there are teachers that are afraid to cooperate with others because somebody's going to get a leg up on them and their students are going to beat their students. You can fix that with two words: work harder. Just work harder. That's all you got to do. And if we're afraid to help our fellow teachers, why are we hurting their students? Because of our pride? Because
vanity.
Because we want students to hang a banner and we don't want them to hang a banner. It's like Austin Heck at Nazareth High School. He gives me all kinds of crap and I give him all kinds of crap that Canadian kids are going to beat Nazareth kids this year. You know what? Quite honestly, I don't care if his kids beat mine or mine beat his. But if he called me and needed something, I'd do it in a second, and he'd do the same for me. And, if we can't get over some of our own selfishness, we're the downfall of our own operation.
Yep. Okay. I agree with that. All right, let's go on to the final one. Okay, and this leads into the motto of Charles Homer Lane. The future farmers of America must help to make life worthwhile by great, satisfying purposes in the lives of the plain people, which will find their expression through efficient labor for livelihood, the love of learning, and a willing service of humanity. To the rural youth of the nation who are seeking to prepare and to perfect themselves for service through the organization of the future farmers of America, I address this motto as embodying the true vocational spirit: learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve.
12 words sums it up. I mean, it's every day. Learning to do something, doing to learn something. That project method. Earning to live. I have no problem with a good old ag person making piles of money. And then if they are able to turn around and serve the greater good by what they know how to do, whether it is whether they are an inventor, creator, manufacturer, producer, or teacher, it does not matter, because everybody's role is important. Everybody is and I hate to use the word cog in a wheel, because I'm sometimes afraid it diminishes the value of what each person does. But each person has that specific role that they're good at, and when everybody is working in unison with one another, the greater good is served. But yet you can still meet the things that you need for your family and your life and continue to learn and grow as a human. Those 12 words, 4 little lines, every student has to know those. To me, those 12 words to me are even more important than the creed.
Okay,
But
they're a
that's
great
just
template
my
for
take.
life. Yes, great template for life. By the use of that will ensure that you're going to be diligent in labor, just in your dealings, courteous to everyone, and above all, honest and fair in the game of life. And that's the idea. We talk about a lot about leadership, and that's what my idea of leadership as an ag teacher, right? And if I'm diligent in labor, just in my dealings, courteous to everyone, and above all, honest and fair in the game of life, that's the greatest definition of for leadership and a prosperous, clean, and forward life that I can think of that we've ever devised. It came from the people we were informed by when this organization was first established.
And we make our students learn these 12 little words and make them recite it in class. And I think that the most important part there, and don't get me wrong, I think students should learn those words and they need to be able to explain what they mean. But those words are meaningless when the ag teacher doesn't live it and demonstrate it to the students.
Yes, no doubt.
If we're going to have our students do this, if we're going to sell them this organization and we want them to be members, then we need to practice what we preach here and make no bones about it. Guys, this is what I want you to do, but I'm going to do it too.
Well, I think, Swaff, we've established from 1931, we've dived into a little history lesson today here at the Ministry of Gentlemanly Ag Teachers. But I wish I could talk to Charles Homer Lane today about some of his other thoughts were. There's a second or third page to this, which could take up 3 or 4 different episodes just on talking about this and why so much of it is important today. If you could change up a little of the verbiage today, I'm sure that you could fit this into, he says the plain people. I doubt anybody would like to be called the plain people today at all. I mean, that'd probably go over really well. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, but we look at a lot of these things that what we are is who we've always been. And our goal in agriculture education is to ensure that there's a brighter tomorrow. And without labor, neither knowledge nor wisdom can accomplish much. And so that's my thoughts here, Swafford, for what we have going on in that bit of prose from Charles Homer Lane.
No, it's one of these where, change some verbiage to make it more modern, but there's nothing in there that is not appropriate for what we're doing. And hopefully we've got some teachers that are watching this episode that look at themselves and maybe ask that question, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And, those words give you a template to follow as to why we're here. And if you don't want to teach, students how to learn and how to do and how to earn for their lives and serve that greater good, maybe this isn't for you, and that's fine. And, I would much prefer to see ag teachers that truly believe in the words that we want our students to understand, because students can see through you. Their students today they're not stupid. They're a lot smarter than I was when I was their age. And they know when they're getting sold a bill of goods. And if you're going to sell them a bill of goods, let's act like the bill of goods that we're trying to sell them. And if we're not, what are we doing here? And, this is the time of year when everybody's back and getting into the groove of things and you're the most excited for the year. And we're going to get to that point in October where we kind of hit the doldrums a little bit. And we kind of start, man, and the grind's in, we're quarter of the way in. And, you've got to look back and ask yourself, what are we here for? And, and even though sometimes those kids don't want to follow the directions real well and they struggle with what you're trying to do, take a step back. What am I doing here? And if you no longer believe in that motto, go. And if you do, take a second to recharge. And that's something that teachers don't do a very good job of, and it's hard when you're young. It is. You want to go and learn. And now that I've gotten a little older, I know that you call me on Saturday morning, and unless I've really got to go do something, don't call me, man. I have no problem being a little lazy on a Saturday morning. And take your vacation and use the time that you are given, because you do need it. If you use this career in ways that I have, it becomes your life. And, you're emotionally, psychologically, physically invested. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't follow that motto. And so, if you're emotionally and psychologically, physically involved and the kids know it, they'll have respect for you if you say, guys, I got to take a day. And don't be afraid to do that, because as soon as you start sacrificing yourself, then nobody benefits.
I agree. All right. I think that covers our topic today, Swaff.
Well, folks, so we changed it up a little bit. We didn't talk so much in the middle of the episode about our partners, but one of our big partners, and check them out on our website, www.preachingaged.com. And don't forget, find us on Spotify and YouTube and subscribe. That helps us kind of determine who's out there and who's doing what, so we kind of continue to do a better job. And don't forget to leave comments if you want to. Lyle and I are happy to talk about what the listeners want to hear. But our big partner for this episode is Safety First and the guys at getshopsafe.com out of Westville, Virginia. Brian Alexander is an old friend of mine, and his partner are good guys. And what they do is have a web-based or a cloud-based program for you to have safety tests for your students to go out in the shop with all of the machinery and equipment that you may have out there. And in today's world of having the ability to pull up documentation that demonstrates that your students know how to use that equipment, in the unfortunate situation that there ever may be an accident, you've kind of got your back covered, because you've got a little bit of insurance when you can properly demonstrate that you taught them and that students demonstrated their knowledge with their ability to use that equipment. I use it at my school. Check those guys out. The subscription is really reasonable for what you're wanting to do. They keep an online repository of your students' tests, so you can always access it. It is well worth $480 a year. Give those guys a holler. Check them out. They're on our website. Utilize their program, because down the road, in the event that something unfortunate may happen, you've got some documentation there to protect yourself as a teacher. And so with that, Lyle, sign off on this thing, and we'll get this dude out there.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Ministry of Gentlemanly Ag Teachers. Catch us next time. We're on YouTube and Spotify right now, but we should be reaching other streaming platforms here in the near future once we become better at this. So thanks for listening.
Have a good day.